This is Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert, and I'm Meredith. Here we explore the taboo, less obvious, and paradoxical aspects of society. Questions that need nuanced answers, not just Google results. My mission, and yours if you choose to accept it, is to make a more curious future for everyone. Each episode is different, so bring your ADD and your earbuds and have a look around. Before we get into this week's episode, I want to invite you, if you like giving your opinion and getting free stuff, to request to join my private Facebook group. The feedback given there helps shape the show. Search for MFR Curious Insiders on Facebook or click the link in the episode description. This week is a remastered favorite. It was originally a two-part series that I put together here, so you'll notice that the first half really delves into the science of food addiction, the one pop can't stop, why it's not a character flaw, and what big tobacco has to do with it. And then the second half is the story of how my guest transformed her brain, her relationship with her family, and even lost 2 pounds a week. Thankfully, she also shares what you can do about it too. If you end up liking this episode, you'll also like the one I did with a health coach on biohacking for dummies. That's episode 188. All right, friends, keep it curious. It's that time of year again when most of our New Year's resolutions are a distant memory and we are knee-deep in Pinterest recipes on how to bake with Girl Scout cookies. My next guest will help us understand what makes healthy living so damn hard. And spoiler alert, it's not all your fault, but there is hope. She's the leading authority in the subject matter that has ruined many a health goal, processed foods. In her 25 years of research, she's seen over 100 health conditions dissipate thanks to her holistic insights. She's going to spill the tea on defining processed foods and the science of why we crave them. Researcher, former food addict, fact finder, Dr. Joan Ifland. Thanks for coming on to the show.
Hey, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate this.
I've never been so excited to have someone on the show that I knew was going to tell me I need to break up with Chick-fil-A.
Oh, gosh. Well, there are a lot of foods out there, and they're profitable. The food manufacturers hire addiction specialists to get us addicted. But we're going to find out today what to do about it exactly. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Maybe we should start by defining what is processed food, because I feel that we all maybe think we know. I thought I knew, but then as I looked in my kitchen, I cook about 4 or 5 times a week. I cook a lot from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
But even as I looked in my kitchen, I saw things in boxes and I saw things in cans here and there. And I thought, I even like tortillas, so I would love for you to define it. And then I might even give have some specific questions about that. So if you don't mind, if we could start there, that would probably set the stage.
So there are broad categories. Any kind of a sweetener is addictive. It activates the dopamine pathways. Flour is addictive. We know that it activates a serotonin pathway. Excessive salt and dairy and gluten all activate the same pathway as opium. And then you have processed fats that activate the same pathway as cannabis. And then coffee, caffeine, which activates the dopamine, and then food additives. So any time that you process a plant, anytime you concentrate a plant by either removing the fiber or cooking it a lot or powdering it or crystallizing it, you've concentrated the natural endorphins in the plant, and then it becomes addictive. There's enough endorphin to be able to hyperactivate the reward pathways. So you get a high and then a crash, and that's where the compulsion comes in.
So you're defining processed foods from the perspective of its probable addiction qualities.
Yes. It's just kind of almost by definition, because once you processed your food, you've also concentrated it. And so, for example, poppies don't give you a high, but when you extract and concentrate, the opiate in it, then you create opium. So it's the extraction and the concentration of the plant that makes it addictive.
So what about organic foods? If I go to Whole Foods or something and I buy something in a box or a can there, does that still make it processed?
If it's processed, yes. Being organic is like saying, well, what if I smoked organic tobacco? It would still give you lung cancer.
Okay, that's a great analogy.
It's one of the techniques of marketers is to try to put some kind of benefit on the package to lure you to buy it. But it's like if gluten-free, highly processed foods are still processed. They're still going to get into your system quickly and create that high in the reward centers.
So what about locally sourced deer sausage?
So you would look at the label and you would see if it had sugar added to it or maple syrup or excessive salt. You would see what was added to it. If you want to have sausage, you would just buy your own plain ground chicken and you would add sausage spices to it, which takes about 25 seconds.
Right.
And then smush it into patties and put it in a frying pan. It's fabulous.
Skim milk?
So milk is a very interesting substance. Milk has the power to put a 100-pound baby calf to sleep. So that's what it is supposed to do. The calf is supposed to go to sleep after feeding so that it will absorb the nutrients. It won't be running around. So it's like a narcotic. If it can put a 100-pound baby calf to sleep, it can do a lot to a human. There are 4 different casomorphines in dairy, and one of them has been shown to attach to the opiate receptors in the brain. So it's addictive.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this really narrows down the food choices. I've already skipped in my head to, oh my gosh, well, what do we do about all this? Even though I've written, this outline that you and I are supposed to follow, I wonder if the listener has also skipped ahead to, well, what the heck am I supposed to do then? So maybe we should satiate that before we move on, just for the sake of keeping the listener on board with it.
It's a good question. So it just start with proteins. There are so many different proteins. There's beef and chicken and turkey and lamb and mutton. And then there are dozens of kinds of fish and shrimp and shellfish. And then, of course, eggs, and then the plant proteins, all the different kinds of beans, quinoa, amaranth. There's a lot of different kinds of proteins. And then you think about fruits. Only for somebody who's been sensitized, only the low sugar fruits are going to work. In other words, not cause cravings. And so you have all the different kinds of berries and melons and citrus, oranges and tangerines and grapefruit, and the stone fruit, the peaches and nectarines. So there's a long list of those, kiwi. Yeah, so there's a lot of variety there. And then vegetables are endless. There are more vegetables than you could possibly imagine.
So buying quinoa or couscous in a package would not be considered a processed food as long as there's no added sugar in it. Couscous
is a pasta.
Oh.
So it's made from flour.
But its name is so fancy, it must be healthy.
I know. But there's a grain, millet, which it's almost indistinguishable once it's cooked and has a completely different impact on the body. That millet's very high in protein and it's non-gluten. So a lot of people can really enjoy millet, but couscous is a pasta. Orzo is a pasta. It looks like rice, but it's a pasta. Yeah.
So tricky.
Oh, gosh, there's tons. I mean, when you really get into it and you set up a nice rotation and you're buying a big variety of unprocessed foods, your eye is so delighted because the colors are fantastic and all the different textures. and taste. It takes about 3 weeks for people's sense of taste to return after giving up processed foods. But then, oh gosh, the variety of taste is incredible.
Wow.
It's really a delightful thing to try out.
I love how positive that is, since we just, kind of started off with things that maybe are negative, but you have a light at the end of the tunnel. So what makes all of these processed foods, the flour and all the things you mentioned, what makes it so yummy to our brains?
It's the same mechanism that made cigarettes taste good. You're too young to remember the jingle, the Winston cigarette jingle. Winston tastes good like a cigarette should.
Wow.
If you've ever tasted a cigarette, they taste horrible. When, the first time you take a sip of whiskey, oh my God, that tastes so bad. It's the addiction. So the addiction goes over to those taste receptors and it persuades your brain that it tastes good. And so you continue to use it. Once you've gotten off of processed foods, you might be off for a couple of weeks and you go back and you taste some of that stuff. Oh my gosh, it tastes so bad. It tastes like a chemical because it is a chemical.
I agree about the transition. When I stopped, I started eating less processed foods, and then I would go back to some certain food items I have very fond memories of as maybe a teenager or a child. And I'm like, why is this eating? I feel like I'm eating salt. Like this is just so salty.
Yes, you can really detect it. So loss of taste is one of the consequences of eating processed foods.
Oh, dang. It's not just COVID. It's the processed foods making you not be able to taste.
No. We've had this for decades before COVID, and it's devastating. Before COVID hit, every day in the United States, 1,800 people died of a diet-related disease. They were dying, and they weren't able to change their diet. That just shows you the power of this addiction. It will put people in their grave.
And you've talked in lectures about how it's not a character flaw, it's not a lack of willpower, that there is a very intentional system behind how these foods are developed that goes all the way, unfortunately, back to even baby formula. Can you shed some light on all of that?
So, way back in my background, I have an MBA from Stanford, 1978. So I'm very interested in business models. I worked for a corporation. I grew up in a household. My dad was a biochemist and worked in a corporation. So I understand how they work. They just need to produce profits. They've got shareholders. They've got a stock price. They've got employees to pay. They need to make profit. So the tobacco industry developed an addiction business model. They were able to get 2/3 of Americans to smoke. It's a very effective model. It depends a lot on intensive advertising in combination with addictive products. They would heighten the addictive qualities, like they put extra nicotine into the cigarettes, and then make it available everywhere at a cheap price, target the youngest possible user. So in tobacco addiction, they targeted preteen boys with the Joe Camel cartoon campaign. And they were prevented from doing that. But then in the 1980s, 3 things came together. 1, high fructose corn syrup came on the market. It's a cheap sweetener compared to sugar. 2, the U.S. government started promoting processed foods. In the food pyramid, the bottom row is all processed foods. And they were running into trouble with their tobacco business in the courts, the U.S. courts. So boom, they just switched over to processed foods. In the 1985 to 87 period, tobacco bought Kraft, 85% of Nabisco, and General Foods.
What? Tobacco, big tobacco. So who is big tobacco? Who?
So R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris.
And
they bought 10% of the U.S. food market in 2 years. And immediately, within 7 years, you see Saturday morning cartoon commercials for processed foods go from already about 160 per Saturday morning on a Nickelodeon program to 560. And Nickelodeon carried those commercials to 65 million households. We know from research that it's that repeat exposure to a reminder of an addictive product that programs the reward centers in the brain to crave, to flood the brain with craving neurotransmitters. It's a Pavlovian conditioning process.
Well, I spoke with a cult specialist in a previous episode, and it sounds a lot like indoctrination.
Exactly. It's brainwashing. And we have great research showing that it only takes 5 commercials, 5, to persuade a toddler to choose a product. And there they are on a Saturday morning seeing 500 for processed foods. Within 10 years, the obesity rate in children went from 10% to 15%. It's a 50% increase in 10 years. The obesity and overweight rate before tobacco came in Americans, all Americans, included children, was 45%. 20 years later, it levels out again at 70%. We just see the impact. So about 70% of Americans are now overweight or obese. About 66% of American adults smoke. You see, this business model is tragically and shockingly effective.
Well, I never thought of it as I'm I don't know, victim, recipient, whatever, of a business model. I just thought that I really felt like it was more of a character defect. Like, oh, I just have a sweet tooth. I just, in fact, my video producer, Caleb, has a question that he didn't know that you and I were going to chat today. And then yesterday we were chatting and he said, well, I'll let him tell you and then let him ask the question. So I'm going to pass off the headphones.
Hi, Caleb.
How are you doing?
Good.
So here's a crazy question for you. I am addicted to sugar 100%. Can quitting sugar cold turkey cause like anxiety, panic attacks?
Yep. So there is a withdrawal syndrome, and we have 3 different very good studies showing that sugar is worse than cocaine. It has a greater effect and it's more destructive. It alters the brain more deeply than cocaine. It's a sweet tasting, very powerful drug.
That makes a lot of sense. Can it also cause like mental lags, like to where you feel like you're moving like slower, like whenever you're trying? Because so I did, like yesterday, I was like, you know what? I'm just not gonna have any sugar today, and I felt horrible.
Yeah. You go into, it's about a 4 to 8 day withdrawal. You can have a stomach ache, fatigue, brain fog, more intense cravings. You can have a headache. Typically, people will get a headache because their muscles are in spasm from dropping adrenaline levels. And it takes about 4 days for the body to readjust. A lot of toxic microorganisms in the gut are dying because they feed off of sugar. So you can have digestive distress. They're a very clear withdrawal syndrome. These are drugs. The body has a very distinct and different reaction to food versus drugs. And the changes in the body that we see from eating processed foods are drug reactions. So it's just crystal clear.
Thank you.
Super good question.
I would love to hit on in a little bit more detail how addictive like sugar and flour are. You talked about dairy and its sedative effects, which I think we'll all agree that that we feel that with milk, and you talked about how, well, also dairy lights up the cannabinoid receptors in our brain, correct?
Dairy lights up the opiate receptors.
Opioid, okay.
It's got 4 different casomorphines. They're called casomorphines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's the processed fats that light up it's called the endocannabinoid pathway. The processed fats.
So part of the addiction is the system. I hate to say that, but I mean, it's just the truth. I think I heard on Sean Stevenson's podcast that one of the large pizza companies was financially incentivized to put 3 times the amount of cheese on their pizzas. And it was kind of packaged as a benefit for the dairy farmers. But how can we make healthy choices if this is the system that we live in? And then the second thing I'm hearing you say is the messaging. The messaging is everywhere from childhood. So not only is the food, not only is there sugar in baby formula, but there's, commercials about having sugar breakfast. And actually, to support that point, a small anecdote is we don't have television in a traditional sense. We just, we're not crazy. We're not animals. We have Netflix, but we don't have there's no commercials, And so I haven't seen commercials in a long, long time. And a few years back, I was waiting in a waiting room at a tire shop to get my car done. And the TV was just playing. You know what the 2 commercials were? Food and pharmaceuticals. Every other, and there was no advertisement about anything other than food and pharmaceuticals. And then if it wasn't about food, it was about food-shaped toys. Look at this donut-shaped pool float. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a problem. But it was because I had removed those things from my life that I then noticed the contrast when I was sitting in the waiting room.
Yes, it's called surround marketing. So the idea is you addict to the reward pathways and then you constantly stimulate them. And so the person just gradually over the years develops nonstop thinking about food. And it doesn't have anything to do with their childhood issues. They're not lazy. They're not self-sabotaging. It's not genetic. It's none of that insanity that we're told it is. It's a mechanical problem. You have these hypersensitive brain cells. So once the product has become highly addictive, so they added nicotine to cigarettes, they added a lot of sugar, fat, salt, dairy to processed foods. A loaf of bread in 1970, it was formulated quite differently than a loaf of bread in 1990. That loaf of bread was loaded up with sugar, fat, salt. And you could eat one slice in 1970, but by 1990, you would eat one slice. It would kindle, it would set off the addiction, and there you would go to eat the whole loaf helplessly. Once the brain floods with these addictive neurotransmitters, the frontal lobe is not getting enough blood supply to work. So even though you don't want to eat the whole loaf of bread, that part of the brain is not firing. It's crashed. So it's just like when your computer crashes, there's no data in and there's no data out. So that is why they will wake up kind of from a binge or overeating and say, I know better than that. And they will start blaming themselves. So why do I love talking about this business addiction model so much? It's because this is not your fault. I didn't ask for smoking, but I've got asthma now. I'll have asthma for the rest of my life. I grew up in a smoking household with constant bronchitis. And then I smoked myself for about 15 years from high school when I got brainwashed. Oh, this is so cool. Of course, it's not cool. It's disgusting. Up until I had my first child. So I just hope there's one thing that your audience takes away from this. This is not your fault. It's a vicious addiction. It's very deeply seated because it starts so young. It's got a lot of different substances involved. It's heavily stimulated. But you can be trained to avoid the processed foods in the culture and especially to avoid the messaging. So it's just training. It does take years. And the thing that's really vicious and sad about what the business model does, it engages our conformance drive. Conformance drive is one of the most powerful forces in the brain. For all the years of human evolution, if you belonged in a tribe, you would live.
Right.
And we still have that. So the food industry will show, these characters like Spider-Man because the child wants to be accepted by Spider-Man. So it's going to do what Spider-Man is doing. It's why they hire, I forget his name, but McDonald's recently did a promotion with a rap singer. And everybody wants to be like that rap singer. There's a TikTok dancer, a young woman, a 16-year-old woman. Dunkin' Donuts hired her to promote this really addictive, destructive caffeine product, a coffee, like to 16-year-old girls. So they just viciously exploit that conformance drive to get us to do things. So to get us to buy things. We now have research showing that you have to be in your own social circle, a healthy social circle, and break free from the conformance drive that's been activated by the addiction business model and switch, just gradually transfer that conformance drive to healthy people. And then it's pretty cool because then everything becomes shockingly easy. No, my tribe doesn't eat that. No, my social circle doesn't eat that. No, I would never go there. No, my social circle doesn't go to that place.
I love how your approach is to use our natural human tendencies to empower ourselves and not to punish, or what's the word I'm looking for?
Judge.
Deprivate. I'm really excited to talk about how we can redeem our brains, redeem our bodies, but what happens if we don't, and then what the listener can actually do. So now we know that processed foods are like the double agent bad guy in a James Bond movie. You know, they're like the bad guy we can't quit. We keep dating them.
Yes, the abusive boyfriend, yeah.
So
or girlfriend.
Yes. So what happens if we quit? If we quit the processed foods, what will happen? Hey, Curiositors, just a quick pause to show gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. From time to time, I recommend other podcasts you might like. And here's one I know that you're going to love. It's the Jordan Harbinger Show. I love it because it's smart without being too highbrow and 1,000% ADD friendly. I know, you love it already. I'm a genuine true fan. When I have time to listen to podcasts just for pleasure, not, guest research, the Jordan Harbinger Show is my automatic choice. It's like when you're hungry and someone asks you what you want, and then before you even have a minute to think about it, you find yourself at Chick-fil-A because, obviously, Jordan's the Chick-fil-A of podcasts. Some of my favorites include the one with the man held hostage by Somali pirates. That's episode 115. And the pain psychologist about how pain lives in the brain, not in the body. Episode 661. You can't go wrong with adding the Jordan Harbinger Show to your rotation. It's incredibly interesting and there's never a dull show. Search for the Jordan Harbinger Show. That's HARB as in boy, IN as in Nancy, GER. On Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. This episode is also brought to you by Insect. I don't just recommend them because they've been such a huge support of the show since day one. Their approach to pest control just puts my mind at ease. Their management plans are based on proper pest identification, not just blasting everything. With an emphasis on avoiding non-target species. One of the owners is a beekeeper, so pollinator respect is always top of mind. They take time to ask the right questions and their work is guaranteed. But don't wait till the last minute to get on their schedule. If you're in the Florida Panhandle or Gulf Coast of Alabama, give them a call, enscc.net. This episode is also supported by the UWF Historic Trust. Listen, a lot of you come to Florida for vacation and there's something you need to know. Sometimes it rains here, and sometimes you tourists use spray sunscreen and fry yourselves on the first day. So don't plan your Pensacola trip without also getting tickets to the UWF Historic Trust. It's good for a whole week and it's a great indoor activity option. You'll recognize Trader John's where I record the show in the Pensacola Museum of History. Get your tickets in person so you can show an agent one of my emails and get $2 off an adult ticket. Visit historicpensacola.org. Now back to the show. Remember to stay till the end where I give you a sneak peek of next week's episode.
Well, it's pretty shocking. This is a big part of my own story. I eliminated sugars and flours from my diet in 1996. And I had lifelong health problems that just went away. It took a couple of weeks, a couple of months, but some of them started going away in a couple of days. So this is kind of the fun adventure part of this proposal, is to find out what is true about your own health conditions. Like we've been told, I had an employee once who had these really painful skin eruptions. And she said, well, I'm doomed. My mother had them and my grandmother. Well, she got on a clean food plan and they went away. So yes, her mother and her grandmother had them also in reaction to processed foods. Mm-hmm. So when people say depression runs in my family, I'm like, depression in response to processed foods. So it's just so much fun to try this out. You know what? You can just try it out. And yes, like we mentioned in the last episode, it's going to take 4 to 8 days to get through withdrawal. And you could have a headache or stomach ache, intense cravings. The people get those intense cravings and they think they're going to stay and they're just going to spend the rest of their lives with intense cravings, being unable to assuage them with the processed foods because they've gotten off of processed foods. That's not true. They will go away. It's a shocking thing. January 4th, 1996, I'm sitting at my dining room table. And for the first time in my life, I get to choose what I think about. I'm not compulsively thinking about food. Plus the relief from brain fog and fatigue are some of the things that you get in that first 4 to 8 days. And it's thrilling. The bloating stops. I know I was eating a lot of food and I was still losing 2 pounds a week, but then the allergies went down.
That's 2 pounds a week is a lot.
It's a safe level.
Wow.
With no cravings, no hunger, no deprivation, just shocking how easy it was to lose that weight. But then the allergies went away and a lifelong sinus infection cleared up. But the thing that actually got me on this path 25 years ago, this month is my 25th anniversary, is the release from anger. I was a rager and I was raised by ragers, and it was terrifying. I had a terrifying upbringing, constant criticism, lots of anxiety, irritability, depression, a lot of shaming. And it turned out that it was chemically driven. You can imagine how thrilled I was. And that is why I picked this up as a career 25 years ago.
So it's almost like you became another person or a better version of yourself.
But gosh. It's just like the witch left and this nice lady came in to take her place. 3 weeks into this, the change was so drastic. I sat down, my children were 11 and 12 years old, and I had this husband, and I sat down with them, and my therapist was helping me figure this out. I said, I'm not going to provide you with these foods anymore, and I will provide you with these foods. So I gave them a list, and I said, please circle all the foods that you like. I got them all those foods. I mean, raspberries and blueberries, and all people like this food. Roast chicken, everybody likes roast chicken. So it was surprising to me. They didn't put up a fuss at all. It's like, Mom, anything we can do to help you, because the witch had left.
Right.
And they didn't want that witch to come back. So, Mom, if it's the processed foods, no problem. We will not eat them in the house. We won't bring them in the house. We won't eat them in front of you. We're not going to ask you to pay for them or take us to get them. Because when I figured out about the irritability, I think, okay, great. I'm giving my children foods that make them irritable with me. I think I'll stop doing that.
Right.
And they just excelled, because once you get out from under these drugs, your brain clears up. You can think really clearly. You've got full use of your frontal lobe. And they were at school then with no competition. They were the ones with the clear heads, the nice personalities, because they didn't have this, unstable emotions. And they just excelled. And they in very competitive years, they went to the schools of their choice. They went to the graduate schools of their choice. They got the jobs of their choice. There's just no competition for them.
And
because their heads are so clear.
You've seen other people that you've worked with, clients, and maybe people that were in different studies see similar results as well with things like, I think I heard you mention Crohn's disease and leaky
diabetes,
gut.
irritable bowel, heart disease, stroke. Why are so many different diseases? Why do they fade away when you come off these processed foods? They're unbelievably destructive. So there's systemic inflammation from processed foods, which means that your heart is inflamed and your brain. Your joints are inflamed. Your muscles are inflamed. It's part of the reason why people develop dementia, Alzheimer's. It impacts sleep because your respiratory pathways are also inflamed. So asthma, a lot of diseases are related to this body-wide inflammation. We think the brain fog might also be part of the inflammation syndrome. There's a second system that's not functioning, and that is the gut, the digestive system. These foods feed toxic microorganisms in the gut, and the gut releases those into the bloodstream. So you have a second source of systemic distress. And then you have unstable blood glucose, which just wreaks havoc on emotions and behavior and energy and promotes diabetes. And then you have hormone disruption because the adrenal glands are involved in stabilizing blood glucose. They are activated. The adrenal glands are activated via a pathway in the brain. So that is why we have this really intense sense of anxiety. And then hormones can't be regulated by the adrenal glands. So you have hormone disruption. We have 4 major systems in the brain that are rendered dysfunctional. They're not working. So that's when you get this very long list of seemingly not related diseases, but they're all related to the processed foods. So you can kind of turn the whole medical system upside down and say, rather than trying to treat diabetes and depression or heart disease, just treat the processed food addiction and all of that stuff will clear up.
But Joan, that's not profitable.
You know, I will tell you, Meredith, I've thought about that, with my business background. We've developed this system where we can train people to create a business out of helping other people get through this, get off the processed foods, and then stay off. Because when you get off the processed foods, the food industry is just waiting there to start bombarding you again, and the addiction will come back. So it's a great skill to learn how to do this, and then how to embed yourself in a community that your brain can copy, that your brain can be safe in conforming to. So there are business opportunities out of this, but you're right. Health plus food in the U.S. domestic economy is 1/3 of the economy.
Wow, that's intense. Is there benefit for just reducing your intake of processed foods, or is it like saying, well, just a little heroin is okay?
The problem with processed food addiction is that there are 2 problems. One, there are so many substances to get off of, and they each have their own withdrawal syndrome. So you want to go very, very slow, and you don't really want to try until you're in that community of healthy people. Because if you try to give them up while you're around people who are still using or still consuming those processed foods, then the addiction will persuade you that you're being deprived. But if you're around people who are saying, oh, I can't believe my head's so clear, I can think clearly. I thought I was, I thought it was getting old. No, my joints don't hurt anymore. Then that conformance drive, you're never going to feel deprived that your joints don't hurt anymore. It's just the messaging in the environment is going to elevate the joy of being free from these substances. If you're in a community that's still eating a lot of them, then it's going to feel like deprivation. Nonetheless, you have to go slowly. If you don't do the whole list, then the addiction will just transfer to the next substance. Nonetheless, you will get incredible benefits. So in 1996, we only knew about the sugars and flours. I got off the sugars and flours and my life changed dramatically. And then over the years, I realized, okay, processed fats, excessive salt, dairy, caffeine, I need to get off of those as well. But it took years.
It kind of set you up to accept that these other ingredients were causing additional problems. And so you were motivated to get rid of those because of the success that you had with the other ones.
Yeah,
I love that you also talked about community first. I had never thought of that. I never thought that when trying to create a new nutritional habit, whatever it would be, that you should first find community around that lifestyle.
Yep.
Instead, I just, pictured me eating sliced peppers while my friends are having, Cheez-Its.
Yes. Now, it's shocking how much easier it is if you're in the right community.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like you belong, then your brain is going to really work overtime to get you to feel like you belong.
Gosh.
And that includes eating processed foods. So recently, in the last year or so, in our own services, we've begun to focus on the entire household. So yes, we can provide an online community, but isn't it so much easier if our members' households are joining them?
Right.
So and plus, great, I'm free, but if my household is still using processed foods, I'm going to be in the hospital with them. So there's a lot of benefit to and you're not fighting with your household, you're controlling the messaging in the household and what foods are available. So we're taking that addiction business model and flipping it to our defense. We're fighting fire with fire.
And you're so right about the family aspect of it, because when you are an individual, you make individual choices, obviously, but when your choices are to continue to live in an unhealthy way, whatever that means, ultimately, you are burdening your family. And so healthy decisions are unburdening your family member to not have to care for you when your choices have caught up. And I love the empowered approach of getting the whole family involved. So
yeah,
now that we've talked about the positive effects of removing these things from our lives, what are the consequences of continuing down the path of eating what has come to be known the standard American diet?
You miss having a life. The big thing that people are not aware of, it's shocking when you come out from under it, is the brain fog, the depression, and the cravings. That means that you're not really connecting with other people. A lot of time you're looking at somebody and I can just see that they're thinking about food. They're not really able to connect with me, or they have the brain fog or the fatigue or the sleepiness. So you're not having a life. And then you do have the pain. You have the physical pain related to inflammation. You're headed towards heart disease, amputations, blindness, kidney failure from diabetes, stroke, paralysis. You're headed towards depression and irritability and anxiety and shame, chemically induced, not related to life. And then you've lost your cognitive powers. So the attention, the learning, decision-making, when you're eating those processed foods, you're not making a decision. You're being compelled by the addiction. It's not a choice. People say, why did you make that terrible choice? You didn't make a choice. Those choice neurons were not firing. It was the addiction controlling behavior. So frontal lobe is attention span, learning, decision-making, memory, impulse control. And people lose those abilities. The research on this is absolutely rock solid. You eat a lot of processed foods, you have what's called cognitive impairment. And you think so you're labeled as slow as a child. Mm-hmm. And you think you're slow. You're not. You're drugged up without your knowledge or agreement. So you're missing life. And then you're putting your family's financial security at stake because the leading cause of bankruptcy is a health crisis.
Yeah.
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 So your insurance, if you get cancer's on that list because of the way sugar not only feeds some cancer cells, but impairs immune function. You're more likely to die of COVID because your immune function is also impaired. Processed foods create a miserable life. And then you're so tired and brain clogged that all you can do is watch TV. And then TV is just pulling you down further. Screen addiction, spending addiction, gambling addiction. These are all, you've got to be in the right community to avoid transferring the addiction to shopping addiction or even sex or relationship addiction. Just got to be in a community which recognizes when a compulsion is building and heads it off. There are just very specific things to do for this.
Well, that's a great transition to talk about those specific things because, I think the listener might think, okay, well, you got a compelling argument there, and they certainly identify with the things that you've talked about. This is very typical of our modern human experience, right? Mm-hmm. What are practical steps that listeners can do to get a little bit closer to that more optimized state of mind and state of body?
I know this probably isn't what you're expecting me to say, but I'm going to say it. It all starts with accepting. It could take some time. It could take years to fully accept this, that it's a severe addiction. And so we're going to build our lives around protecting these highly sensitive, addicted neurons. Today, what people can start to think about is what processed foods are in my house, because it's stimulating when it's just available, when you know it's there, when you know you could stand up from the TV and go into the kitchen and get it. The buildup of addictive neurotransmitters is happening without your knowledge, without your awareness, without your agreement. It's an automatic response in the brain because we do have primitive brains. The frontal lobe is only 2% of the brain. The rest of the brain is working on messaging, not logic. So for millions of years, my goodness, if a human found food, they ate it.
Right.
If food is available, you eat it. And that's the primitive brain. There's food, eat it.
That sounds like Cookie Monster.
Yeah, it's kind of like just common sense. When you start to think, okay, I'm still at my brain, 98% of my brain is still working the way it was 3 million years ago, when finding food was the top priority of everybody's lives. Finding food, fighting off predators. But famine was the leading cause of death. So people are very, very food sensitive. And if food was available, they ate it. And they ate it all. And they ate it fast. Before somebody else got it or before the predator came and got them. So I know people say to me, well, I'm just going to get my car. It's okay. Because you can put a great big sign in your car saying, these foods will kill me. These foods make me sick. And so as you're driving to go get the stuff, your brain, your frontal lobe is being activated by that sign. And you might be able to return control from the addicted brain cells to the frontal lobe and stop. So getting that buffer between you and the store is actually valuable. And you'll just have less cravings in your house, and your house will stop becoming a cue or a trigger by association. This is where we eat the processed foods. And I'm alone. So this is where I can eat a lot of them and nobody's going to judge me. And I'm tired. It's the end of the day. You come home. That's where night eating comes from. So keeping the processed foods out of your house, teaching yourself about processed foods. What is a processed food? We have some resources I can suggest for your audience. Foodaddictionresources.com is a free website with lots of handouts on it. So go and get the list of excluded foods and just start to be aware. Where am I eating these? Just start to study the situation. Where is this happening? And then step 2, where am I being bombarded by either stress or food messaging? Because stress can activate those addicted brain cells. So where am I being exposed to stress? And where am I being exposed to food reminders or food messaging? Once you start to get a feel for the scope of the problem, then you can just gradually start. Like we started with sugars and flours. It was a long time before I got dairy out of my life. And we have tons of videos. You're making this beautiful video. Immerse yourself in food addiction education. We've got a Facebook group, a YouTube channel. We've got free stuff. We're releasing a website called processedfoodaddiction.com. So immerse yourself in that messaging and play that messaging in your household so that your household members are also being immersed in it. So you can do this as a group and never let up. Because as soon as you stop listening to recovery messaging and you start listening to mainstream messaging, it'll creep back. That's why 99% of people who lose weight regain it. It is not their fault. They're being bombarded with stimulation to gain weight. Of course they're going to gain weight.
I wonder how many people who have started that journey of removing the messaging are without a TV now.
I don't have a TV.
Yeah.
I just bought a new condo in the last couple of months, and that was a condition that they take the TV out. Yeah. And so, there's plenty of stuff on my computer, and I struggle with YouTube addiction.
Oh,
too.
Right.
I have to I'm watching one Mojo. That's it.
They're all picking the Mojo. That's so amazing. This has been
I'm watching one, and then I'm going to quit.
This has been such a good... I feel so motivated after talking with you, and I even knew what we were talking about. I knew it was going to happen, and I feel motivated. And I hope that the listener feels motivated and empowered. Let's get our frontal lobes back and move forward. So thank you again so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate you so much.
Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, you'll also like the one I did with a health coach on biohacking for dummies. It's episode 188. Stay tuned next week when I talk with a historian and biologist about the history of why we see bad teeth as low intelligence. Until then, keep it curious.